I'm Sherry Meidell. I'm a children's book illustrator. I've done a little bit of oil painting and mostly painted with watercolors. The Eastmans asked me if I would like to display some of my paintings at the West Bountiful city offices while my husband and I went on a mission for our church over at BYU, Hawaii. And so we were able to put up a lot of watercolors and paintings to display while we were gone. We thought we were going to be gone for almost 2 years, but it ended up being 1 year because of COVID. And so the last part of the display of the artwork has kind of been in a dark room where nobody could come see it. So hopefully people in West Bountiful were able to come over and take a look at it before everything was shut down. So every painting that I do has a story behind it. And so I'd like to show you some of the paintings that have been on display here in West Bountiful and tell you some of the stories behind each one of the paintings. So I love painting watercolors because there's usually a story behind the watercolor, whether it is actually in the painting or a story behind the painting. This painting is called Old Glory. My husband's mother, Grandma Goldie, always wanted to go to the 24th of July parade. And we'd have to go like 2 nights early and sleep over the one night, and the whole family was there. But you never knew what you would get that night at Liberty Park. And so sometimes groups of teenagers were running through our campsite. One year there were a ton of police cars that pulled up and started running through our campsite. So I love in this painting the story behind the parade. This cowboy in his cowboy gear and carrying the American flag is kind of an interesting juxtaposition with the audience that's in shorts and flip-flops. And I had to put Grandma Goldie in the painting, and so she's down front and center holding one of her grandbabies. So this painting is called Delivering Pies to the Gifford House. It's a little bit of a stormy sky. It was painted at the Utah Watercolor Society plein air painting. I guess it's a party or a paint out, and that we do every year. So it was fun to just paint outside, but when you're painting in plein air, you never know what you're going to get. So you have the stormy cloud in the background, and luckily we just finished up painting just as a downpour came. And watercolors and rainwater do not mix, so it was a good thing we got in the car before it really started downpouring. This painting is called At the Cliff's Edge. It's another plein air painting that was painted down by Tori in Capitol Reef National Park. One of the nice things is when you're doing plein air painting, if you can have your paintings flexible enough that you can actually walk away from the highway and the road and get off on the very edge of a cliff. You can get some very dramatic paintings that way. And it doesn't matter where you're at, people will find you and they stop and talk to you and ask you about the paintings. One of the other things that found us here in Capitol Reef was this was the year of the biting gnats. And painters came back with spots all over their faces, in their hair from these gnats. And we saw a couple of rangers that had nets that would fit over their hats and then over their faces. And so we went and purchased one of those gnat hats, gnat nets, for any time in the future that we needed the to get away from the bugs. So I love the dramatic values in this painting, and when you're out painting, the light changes in a painting, and so you have to work quickly to try to capture the light of that first image that drew you to this site, so at the cliff's edge. So this painting is called the Cox Comb. It's a formation of rocks that are outside of Torrey. So when you're painting on location, sometimes you would think that all the good paintings are in the national park, but this rock formation is outside of the park. And so if you know individuals that live in the city of Torrey, sometimes they can direct you to some very nice paintings. And this ended up being a very nice painting. I love the white value of the rock and the dark of the mountain behind it and the foreground. So I like the way this ended up. So this painting is called Poppies and Pansies. I like to carry around a sketchbook, a camera, so that I'm ready to capture any paintings that I might see that I want to paint. But you don't have to always go far when you want to see a good painting. This painting was right outside my front door. So I love the freedom of painting flowers with watercolor. It's almost like magic. The watercolor paint does things that you never expect. And so your job as an artist is to not go ahead and correct that, but just let the paint and the paper create something better than you envisioned at the very first. So this painting is called Daydreaming in Durango. I'm fond of this painting because this was the painting that got into the National Watercolor Society, and I was able to get signature status, which is quite a nice thing to get, and it helps when you're giving workshops if you say, oh, she's a signature member of the National Watercolor Society, then they're going to want to take your workshop. So the story behind this painting is this is just a little lady in Durango, and these chance occurrences when you just take your camera, turn and click, can end up being some very nice paintings. We were camping out in a campground. Some of our kids were in tents. A big bear came through the campground during the night and tried to get into some of the coolers. The next night, all the daughter-in-laws were in the trailer. Only the sons were in the tents. So the title of this painting is Cold Duck Under White Flowers. It was a demo that I started for my class over at the Bountiful Davis Arts Center. So painting paintings, one of the best things you can do to improve your artwork is to start to teach people how to paint. And so when I'm painting my paintings now, I will hear my own voice say, hey, you need to watch the values in that painting, or you need to be a little more free with your brush strokes. And so I can actually end up teaching myself how to paint watercolors. So I love the white and how you can have white flowers, but they can be a lot of different colors in that white. And I love how it comes down into the apples and the glass vase. This painting is called Desert Rocks and Blossoms. So it was kind of exciting to discover a method to frame the watercolors that didn't have glass on it. Sometimes a glass can be a barrier between the person that's looking at the painting and the actual painting. So these paintings that have a varnish on top, you can approach the painting and see it easier than you can when there's glass in front of it. So I like both methods of framing. But I love this painting because it was, I was out mountain biking. And this is somewhere where an artist usually wouldn't find something to paint. But I was waiting for some friends to loop around the trail, and I could capture this scene and then come home later and make a watercolor out of it. So this painting is called Onion Street. If you go outside our house and look at the street sign, it says 800 West. But down in small print underneath it, it says Onion Street. So for years I have driven down Onion Street and seen the old mansions that line that main street in West Bountiful, and it's captured my imagination. I've thought about what people lived there and the farms that they farmed and the food that they ate and what were their families like. And I wanted to capture a bit of that in this painting. So I put those old mansions along the street, and then there's a little bit of collage in this painting. So I've taken actual leaves from different trees and put it in here, and then lined this whole front end with sunflowers. And I love the man leading a bunch of grandchildren on this big old workhorse. And so this is his day off of work, and he's spending some time with his grandkids. So, and you can just take a look at each one of those houses and think about the people that lived inside on Onion Street. So we live at the very end of Onion Street, and we've kind of made our own history on Onion Street. And so when my boys drive down Onion Street and they head towards our house, they have their own images of life and what happened when they were younger. So this painting is leaning towards the light. And we kind of end up with this painting that's from my front yard on Onion Street. And it's another floral. And I love the freedom you can get with watercolor and flowers. And you can spatter, you can do a little collage. It's very freeing, and the freedom that you feel when you're painting the watercolor, it shows in the finished product of the painting. And I love the way that this painting ended up. And I love the way the tulips are all leaning towards the light at the end of Onion Street. If you would like to see more of my artwork, you can check out my whole painting process on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, Sherry Meidell. And also you can check out what's happening in my artistic life on my blog, which is Sherry Meidell's Teeter, Totter Tales. So thank you very much.